So hello, my colleagues, and I do hope everyone is having a wonderful weekend. Okay, so we priced out this bond here. We went through this example with the risk of default, right? Will the bond default? Okay, we came up with a couple different interest rates for a couple different scenarios, right? One was 10.63, and we said default free it was 4. And with a certain default it was 15.56. Okay, so basically we had we put different prices in, okay, and we came up with different scenarios for the bond. Here was $1,000, and here was the price, one price, and then here was the if the bond was worth 900, because it's gonna default, right? So we had that issue. So we had a return of 15.64%, and then we had a return of 10.63, which I think was kind of in the middle, it said, right? So to summarize those three examples of default, bond price, yield, and return with different likelihoods of default, right? So that's kind of what we were doing. All right, so here's a table that summarizes it all. So this table summarizes the price, expected return, and yield to maturity of the Avant bond under the various default assumptions. Note that the bond's price decreases and its yield to maturity increases with a greater likelihood of default. Which makes sense, right? If something's going to be risky, you want to pay less, right? Conversely, the bond's expected return, which is equal to the firm's debt cost of capital, is less than the yield to maturity if there is a risk of default. Moreover, a higher yield to maturity does not necessarily imply that a bond's expected return is higher. So you see this table here. Here's the three different prices. Default free, a 50-50 chance of default. Here's certain default. So obviously you're going to pay much less. You notice how the price is going down because you're taking more risk here, right? And here is the yield to maturity going up as the price goes down. And here is your expected return. Okay. So I want to speak about this a little bit. Bond ratings. There are companies that will rate bonds according to their chance of default, right? So basically, the default risk is given a rating by companies, and there's a couple companies who do it, and one in particular is Moody's, right? Moody's investment rating, and the other is Standard & Poor's. So these are companies that rate bonds on their chances of default. So it summarizes the rating class. So you could kind of see this is the highest rating up here, investment grade debt. See, here's the highest ratings, right? And then you get down below BBB, you know, here for Moody's. This is Moody's scales, and this is where you start seeing junk. These are called junk bonds, and there's some speculative elements here, and it gets worse and worse as you go down. So lowest rated class of bonds and issues. So rated can be regarded as having extremely poor prospects of ever attaining any real investment standing. So these are the way they're rated, right? So just to be clear, the description is Moody's description, but you see the two grades here with the slash? See that slash? All right, so there's a little asterisk up here to make it clear. So the asterisk, the one on the left of the asterisk is the Moody's rating, and the one on the right is the Standard & Poor's rating. Okay, so but the description itself is Moody's. Okay, but this tells you if you're going to buy a bond, what's your chance of getting your money back, and how much, you know, if it's going to be rated AAA, you're going to get a lower coupon, as opposed to down here, you'll get a much higher coupon. So the top categories again are called investment grade bonds because of their low default risk, right? So you got low default risk. Bonds in the bottom are speculative or junk or high yield bonds because their likelihood of default is high. All right, so that's important to know. So basically, the risk is whether they're going to file bankruptcy or you're just going to get your money back. All right, so that's just you can read up a lot about that on other places. All right, so here's corporate yield curves. So here's a graph which displays the blue is the Treasury yield curves, right? And you'll notice this rate is lower than the other two. And here's the U.S. industrials that are rated AAA. Everyone see that? And here's the U.S. industrials rated A. So you'll see this has got the higher risk. So this has got the higher return here as opposed to the AAA. And of course this is risk free because this is government, so this is lowest. So you can see as you start getting more risky, the yield goes up. Everyone see that? So this shows the yield curve for U.S. Treasuries and yield curves for corporate securities with different ratings. Note how the yield to maturity is higher for low rated bonds which have a higher probability of default. All right, so sovereign bonds are bonds issued by national governments, right? And they're called sovereign bonds. So basically it's another name for government bonds, which, as it says here, the U.S. Treasury securities. So some countries are not always default free, right? Some countries do have risk. And I don't know if you remember, but Greek bonds kind of defaulted and stuff back in 2012 on its standard debt. So, Greece defaulted on their bonds. So not every country is going to be considered risk-free. So Greece defaulted on their IMF loans when it failed to make $1.7 million bond payments. So you can read up on this in the history of Greece and they've had a lot of problems, Greece. Okay, and if you want 2008, there was a huge, I don't know if you remember it, maybe you were a little too young then, a credit crisis, a financial crisis. And you could kind of see here 2008, the bond yields going up because of all the risk and everything that went on in the world. So here was the kind of like the normal bond curves, right? But look at the spike in 2008, right? And here's the spread between short-term loans to major international banks and U.S. Treasury bills, also referred to as the Treasury Eurodollar. This is the TED spread, it's called. So, but you can kind of see that there was a lot of stress in 2008. All right, so more on the global financial crisis here, which is an interesting read. They give you a lot of good stuff to read. All right, so here's a summary on valuing bonds. And this section 6.1, they give you the equations here that we've gone over. And this is a good section to review. All right, because all the equations are here. So I would review this if I was you. So here's how the coupon, here's the equations we all saw. 6.1, 6.3. Here's the price. So we talked about the dynamic behavior of bond prices with interest rates. All right, here's a couple of bullet points. A bond will trade at a premium if its coupon rate exceeds its yield to maturity. It will trade at a discount if its coupon rate is less than its yield to maturity. As a bond approaches maturity, the price of the bond approaches its face value. Right, and we saw others. So these bullet points are most important. So, for instance, long-term zero coupon bonds are more sensitive to changes in interest rates than a short-term. Okay, so here was the yield curve and bond arbitrage. Because we can replicate a coupon bond using a portfolio of zero coupon bonds, the price of a coupon-paying bond can be determined based on the zero coupon yield curve using the law of one price. And this is for treasuries, all right? All right, and then we talked about corporate bonds here and sovereign bonds. All right, so that's it for chapter 6. And there's more stuff you can read here. There's a lot of good stuff. And here's a book on the Greek debt problems, but you can also get all that stuff up on online. Alrighty, so we'll knock off there.